Podcast City Network.
Listener discretion is advised.
You're listening to The Everett Lee Show. A shot of entertainment to the head. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the entertainment.
What's happening, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the Everett Lee Show podcast. I am Everett Lee. Quick shout out to everyone who follows me on Twitter. You can follow me at the Everett_Lee. Facebook.com/Everett Lee. Click that thumbs up. And, of course, Podcast City Network, the official host of the Everett Lee Show. Tonight, I have, right now, on video with me, a legend, a veteran in the business. He's been in the business 40 plus years. He is wrestler and promoter Thumper Chapman. How you doing there, Thumper?
Oh, I'm doing great, man. I hate to correct you, but that's 30 years. I ain't that old. Don't make me come on and body slam you. I shaved, man, to make me look older. Come on.
It's all good. It's all good. I'm a little green around the edges.
Yeah, I can kind of see it coming out, but just kind of easing out your gills there for a little bit.
Yeah. I'm a little bit green around the edges, and yeah, it's coming out and stuff. Especially, surprised you didn't see earlier today with the smoke fuming from my ears with my 2-year-old locking herself in the bathroom when I was trying to go to work this morning. That was just chaos.
I raised 4 boys. I know what you mean.
You're on your way to work. You get a call. Got to come back to the house. Your daughter's locked herself in the bathroom. Mama can't open up the door. So I had to go in there and I had to pop the door open. And there she is in the bathtub looking up at me. And, hi. It's like, come on, man.
My son did that one time, and he actually took the key inside with him. And I literally had to run into my bathroom door with my shoulder and bust my door down to get in there. Jeez. And it was the old-fashioned wooden oak doors.
Oh, yeah?
So
Mine.
200-something pounds kind of worked in my advantage.
So you know what I was going through then, man. Yeah, it was bad, man. It was bad just with the trying to pop that door open because she's done it before and it wasn't the first time. That's why I got the baby gate up though, but she's almost like a track star now. Over that gate now. I might have to, have her start running track early now.
That's like Jay Murda, my oldest son. He's a pro wrestler, trained underneath the family, and he was a mischief little kid like that. He'd go lock his brothers and sisters in the bathroom.
Oh, really? Really? Yeah. Oh my goodness.
He's a mean little.
That's crazy. I'm glad I'm just. Dealing with one, and just dealing with one child right now is just enough. But 4, man, my hat off to you there. 4 children. Wow.
Well, I think I'll have to let hair, man. I used to, you know how I used to look with the long blonde hair and all the earrings, and look at me now.
I know why. I know why my dad went crazy now. I know exactly why he went crazy. Because I drove him crazy to that point. That's what kids do. That's what kids do, right?
That is true. Wrestlers are like preachers' kids. They're the worst.
Yeah, and especially talking about kids and stuff and growing up. Where did you grow up at?
Oh wow! I originally grew up in Paducah, Kentucky.
Okay.
Believe it or not.
Wow.
I'm a Kentucky boy.
Nice.
My dad actually originated in the carnies. He was actually a carny wrestler. Back before this thing that we call pro wrestling ever was invented, he actually used to wrestle, he used to put a nickel in the jar to win $15 on a Saturday night to pay his whole bills.
No way.
And that's where it started from.
Wow. That's amazing. That's amazing. And,
he was 13 years old when he started.
Oh, wow. 13. Wow.
That's, he was a big man at 13. He's a real big man.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
But he also worked as a logger, too, during the week. So, he worked in logging camps and stuff like that. Then on the weekends, they went down and they wrestled at the carnivals to make extra money. Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course, you're talking about way back during the Depression and everything. So it wasn't easy.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So you kind of say wrestling been in my blood ever since birth.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I am.
So that's when you first seen wrestling was when you were a kid.
Oh yeah. When I first, you got to realize, growing up back in them days, you only had 3 channels on TV, and occasionally we didn't have cable and all this stuff like they do now. We had the old antenna and old black and white TVs where they had just the TV station in.
Yeah.
And every once in a while, we would get to watch CFWF, Championship Wrestling from Florida, which was the place to be. Gordon Soley, Ron Bass, Dusty Rhodes, Ric Flair, and all them guys, when they were young.
Right. And
from that point, they were my heroes. You got to realize, man, growing up on a farm, at the age of 9, well, actually, I was at the age of 6 when I first actually was able to actually notice what wrestling was. And it fascinated me because when you're working on a farm, it's hard labor.
Yes.
That's the hardest labor you can find, and you never get paid for it. And it was like a fantasy world for me because they took me on a journey between good guys and bad guys. Yes. I seen cowboys, I seen pretty boys, I seen bikers, I seen the world outside of overhauls and horses and cattle, and it was a new world for me. Mm-hmm. And I fell in love with it. Well, we moved down here when I was about 12 years old. And I've always been fascinated with pro wrestling, but I've also had a talent of playing music. Bet you didn't know that.
No, I didn't.
Thumper Chapman actually started off in the music industry. I played professional drums for a lot of years. I started at the age of 9, and I started playing pro at the age of 13 in recording studios. I didn't actually get into pro wrestling until I turned 18. Okay. And I still followed the CFWF, the NWA. I followed all that. That was before WWE was ever even come about.
Right.
They hadn't even joined the NWA at the time. Well, I didn't start pro wrestling until I had actually started growing up a little bit. I think I was about 18 years old. I had actually went to work at Coca-Cola Foods. It's the old Minute Maid plant up here close to where I live. And Gordon Soley, that was a time that Gordon Soley was getting to the point to where he was getting ready to retire. He started to slow down. WWF was coming in, Vince McMahon was buying up a lot of the stuff up to the wrestling industry. And Ron Bass had worked for, believe it or not, Coca-Cola Foods as a sales rep.
Oh, nice.
And I was doing security at the front gate, and I had seen Ron come in, and I had logged him in. And I'm like, wait a minute. I looked at it, I said, Ron Bass, I knew that guy. And I'm like, oh my God, that was my hero growing up. Yeah. And so he come out after his meeting, and we got to talking about pro wrestling, how I've always wanted to be a pro wrestler. Well, you got to realize, they didn't have schools back in them days.
Right.
Yeah. Right. It ain't like nowadays where you go pay $2,000 to somebody trains you, Mm-hmm. Back then, you had to actually find a worker and actually follow them for 6 months carrying their luggage. And then if they thought that you were determined enough and they really liked you, they would get in the ring and start training you. Okay? Now, here's where it gets interesting, because I hear people talk about backyard. But But actually, when they actually worked out their matches, it was actually in the backyard, in a ring, for the shows. That's where they practiced at. That's where they trained at. There was no such thing as big gyms and all these big fancy places where you go to all the time. And no, they didn't have that.
Right.
Yeah. So Ron had invited me to come down, and I got there to his house, and lo and behold, here was Dusty Rhodes and Blackjack Mulligan and Ron Bass. They got so suited up in the green gear, and they come out there and they started working on some moves, and I got to watch them, and Ron looked at me, he says, "Get up here for a second." I got up there, and the first thing he says, "Knock me down." I was like, "What?" You got to realize I was a $120.
Right.
Okay. And he was a big man. I mean, this big man all my son saying, "Knock me down." I'm like, how do you want me to do that? Do you just want me to throw my whole body at you or just beat you down with a baseball bat? This is a young kid that's thinking like this, And he says, "Hit them ropes," and hit me. I'm like, okay. So I hit the ropes and I bumped him. And he says, "No, I want you to hit me." Okay, so I hit the ropes and I hit him. I did that for about 2 months and never moved him. Okay, but I kept getting up every day, up in that area. Every time I get a free shot, I get up there and see if I can hit him. Didn't move him. So one day, and now the whole time that we were doing this, I was going to different shows with him. And I'd grab his bag and I'd carry it in for him, and I'd sit down amongst the guys and I'd listen to their stories. Okay. And they would talk about the places they've done, the matches that they've been in, the crazy things they've seen out on the industry. And I didn't realize I was actually learning the whole time I was sitting there.
Right.
Yeah. I had seen some of the greatest legends that you would ever want to see. And I ain't talking about the John Cena's. I'm talking about before them.
Right. Right.
And it was amazing because the whole time I was sitting, you got to realize it's a young kid that grew up with nothing. We had nothing on the farm. We didn't have money. We, on the farm, we never did without food because we always had animals. But when we come to Florida, we almost starved because we didn't have the constant flow of food like we did up there. So we struggled a lot. So I had to actually quit school at the age of 16 to actually, I was in 8th grade. I had to quit school and actually go to work if I was going to eat. So education wasn't really a big factor in our family, not like it is now.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm very stern on my kids getting their education.
Yes.
I said, use your head for something more than just get beat on.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so this was a big honor for me, being able to travel around with these guys and see the things. I was happy with what I was doing. This because I was seeing behind the scenes things that nobody ever saw. Everybody else saw out in the ring, but I was seeing everything in the locker room, everything that went on. I was a young 18-year-old kid.
Right. Right.
Well, one day Ron said, "Get up, hit me again." Well, he kept telling me things like, "You need to put more weight on, you need to start working out." The whole time he was working out with me on weights, and he was working with me on different stuff, building me up. One day I hit the ropes, and I'll never forget, Blackjack looked at me and said, "Let me show you how to hit them ropes." And all of a sudden he come back, he hit them ropes, he said, "Hey, Ron." And he throwed the signal for a clothesline. He throwed that signal up, and he hit Ron with a clothesline. I seen him bump. He says, "Hit that man like that." So here I am. I'm about $130, maybe $135. So I hit them ropes, and I hit him. All of a sudden, I see Ron bump. Ron says, "Okay, now I'm going to start training you."
Wow.
I was like, "See, yeah." And, shut up, dogs. My dog started barking. I'm sorry. They're loud mouths. But, when I hit him,
Mm-hmm.
he wanted to see the determination I had for this business, because pro wrestling is not an easy business. It's one of the most cruelest businesses you can ever get into.
Right.
Okay. There's no mercy in pro wrestling. Okay. It's one of the biggest cutthroat businesses there is. So whenever I hit him, And I knocked him down. That showed him I was determined enough, because I wouldn't give up, to keep trying.
Right.
That's when my training started at that point. That's where I started learning my face bumps, back bumps, my rolls, and stuff like that. Well, about that time, Ron Bass and them had got a call to go to WWF. That's where Vince had signed them up.
Right.
Okay. One of the catch in Ron's contract that Vince put in there is he could not train outside the WWE, the WWF.
Okay.
He had this young kid in the middle of the training. Nobody trained me. So what did I do? Well, a few years went by, and I had ran into Donnie York. It was York family.
Okay.
And the Yorks knew them all. He knew Ron and he knew all them guys. So Donnie, because Donnie's got a brother by the name of Ronnie too.
Okay.
Donnie, which is younger than me, he says, why don't you come over here and me and my family will start training you? And let me tell you something. I didn't realize that Donnie York's dad had actually wrestled for WWF too. He was coming out of WWF while the others were coming in.
Uh-huh.
So it was great because when they took me in, they started training me. And they actually took me the rest of the way. Now, the whole time I was training, I was still talking to Ron on the phone, and Ron was giving me pointers. He'd given me advice, He'd give me advice all through the years, even when I started promoting.
Right.
Donnie and his family actually had trained me, and so did Al Hartman, trained me for being a promoter, okay, in pro wrestling. And during them years, it was territories, okay. Yeah. Now, I'm sure you heard about the territories.
Yeah, I heard about the territories. I heard about with like Mid-South, Mid-Atlantic. WCW.
It's almost like, have you ever seen the Gangs of New York?
Yeah. The Gangs of New York with Leonardo DiCaprio and
pretty much that's the way it was. You did not be a new kid and come in and run in people's territory. They would come to your house and try to drag you out, beat you down. They would burn your ring down. They physically tried to hurt you because you're running in their areas. Really? And you just didn't get one promoter coming at you. Sometimes you got 4, 5, 6 of them coming at you because no matter where you ran, there was always somebody running in that city. Wow. So you couldn't run nowhere without stepping on somebody's toes.
Right.
So, back in them days, the only place I could find, of course, you got to realize at that time, I had worked as a wrestler, going to different shows, building myself up to about 2001. Okay, and that's where I ran into my lovely wife, Miss Tanya. And me and her had both come out. I'd lost a marriage because of pro wrestling, my first marriage. She decided she wanted to run off with a building contractor. She didn't want to be married to a pro wrestler no more. I guess it wasn't an easy life for her,
Right.
And pro wrestling isn't an easy life.
Right.
So, I guess she didn't like me being gone all the time. So, so when I had actually took a break from the pro wrestling circuit, and I had actually went, honestly, I didn't have a home because I lost my house and everything. My wife took it all. She took even literally the clothes on my back. She took everything.
Damn, she took everything that you had. Your first wife did.
She took everything. A friend of mine that owned a electrical company at the time had loaned me $450 to go buy clothes on my back because she took both bank accounts. She had took all the vehicles. She had took everything.
Jeez.
Whenever I had actually pulled up to my house, I had actually had a restraining order telling me I couldn't come on the property because it was in the divorce paperwork. I couldn't even take my car. I couldn't take nothing. I had actually walked down to the street, which was at a farm store, borrowed a quarter from a guy because my debit card was locked. I couldn't draw no money out or nothing.
Damn.
I had to borrow a quarter to call my dad all the way from out in Polk City, Florida, to come over to Lakeland and get me. Because at that time, we was living out over at Christina Park, which was a really high society area. back in them days, $600,000 was a lot for a house. And this was 3-bedroom, in-ground pool. We had a game room. We had 4 bedrooms. I mean, it was a nice house.
Right.
So my dad had to come get me, and the only thing he had was I had bought him a property over in Lakeland, because I've always wanted to take care of my family, because we was raised very family orientated.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, family first, always. So we had got my dad a piece of property out there, and he had a 1-bedroom camper trailer on it. Now this is how quick you can lose everything so quick. Okay.
Okay.
I went from a 4-bedroom house to sharing a 1-bedroom camper trailer with my brother.
Wow, that is crazy, but it can happen. It can happen.
Oh, yeah.
I dated back years ago. I dated this. I was in between relationships. I was in a relationship for about 2 years, and then after that ended, I rebounded with this one girl, and through the whole summer, this was like in 2009. Through the whole summer, I was with her, and she moved in with me. Big mistake there. She moved in with me for about a week, and then one night the shit hit the fan, and she left, and I got in an argument with her, so I left, and I went to my dad's to cool off. I come back, she cleared out everything I had, and I had to go to her house, and I had to get everything. She cleared out. This is how bad it was. She cleared out everything down to the toothbrush and razor I used, which I got back, and I threw it away because I didn't know what the heck she did. She got stuck up her ass. It was bad.
Yeah, the story that happened to Hulk Hogan, that does happen. All this is his wife left his clothes in one house. I didn't get nothing.
Right.
She took everything. Wow. And to bring it all, so now I'm sitting at a 1-bedroom camper trailer with my brother. 2 people are in a 1-bedroom 1954 camper trailer. Okay. It is not very big at all.
Wow.
My brother actually had to find a bed for me to sleep on because he didn't even have an extra bed.
Jeez.
Yeah, that's how bad it was.
That's how bad.
No bed, no car to go nowhere. I had to walk everywhere I went. No money to do nothing. My friend had just loaned me $450 to go buy new clothes because I didn't have nothing. All I had was just clothes on my back. That was it.
Wow.
Nothing.
She pretty much cleared her out, didn't she? I mean,
everything. She cleared me out. Well, so I'm sitting here. We go to divorce. Okay, it's court day. Okay, my buddy had to give me my lawyer.
Right.
He loaned me his lawyer. The only thing I got out of it was my 2 dogs that I raised from a puppy, an old TV that didn't work, a VCR that was broke, and a suit that didn't fit me no more.
Wow. That's all you got out of that after going to the divorce court and everything?
Now, it was an $800 shark skin suit, but it didn't fit me no more. So it wasn't good to me. So pretty much I still had nothing.
Nothing.
So I had actually went and I had bought me a 1984 Ford Ranger that somebody had took spray cans and painted this truck with it.
Wow.
To have me where to go. Now this is how there's an old saying, how fast the mighty can fall. The mighty can fall fast. Okay, it's who you know in this business that can help you build back up. Right. And don't step on people. This is a very key factor in pro wrestling. Do not ever step on nobody, because once you go up and you're coming back down, you got to see them same people.
Right.
Okay, that's a big factor. So, so here I am, a lot of the guys had helped me build myself back up, and I'm talking to Ron, Ron's encouraged me and the other guys, you thought you can do this, you can build yourself back up. This ain't the first time. We've all been through this, this is nothing new. And so I told my dad, I said, I got to get away from my brother because he was driving me up the wall, I love my brother, but 2 grown men in a 1 camper trailer, it just ain't cutting. So at that time, I had a friend that owned a mobile home park, a 72-unit mobile home park. He said, you know what? You need a break. You need to get away from it. Now, my ex-wife was still aggravating me during this time.
Right.
she would still come back trying to take money, whatever money I made. She's still trying to come up. Baby, I want you back. Baby, I need your help. Baby, this, baby, that. And like a dummy, I kept falling right back into it again. So these guys were like, my buddy said, look, you need to get away from her where she can't find you. Right. I got the ideal spot. I'm like, oh my God. He said, take about 6 months off. He said, I have a mobile home park. His name's Nathan Digraph. And he owns his family owns the Travelodge. I can't even think of it now. There are 21 Palm Resorts. You'll see them in Orlando. It's a really well-off family. And he says, go out there, work as my head maintenance for a little bit, clear your head where she can't find you, because I could hide amongst that, because that would be the last place she'd ever think I would be.
Right.
So I went out there, and I was working one day and just trying to sort in my head life in general. And I seen this most beautifulest 24-year-old redhead woman go walking down around the corner going to where the mailboxes were. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, wow. Well, needless that I know, 3 months later, I would be married to that woman. A year later, we would have my firstborn son, because she had two kids, right? Which was Jay Murda and my other son Dylan, and they're my stepsons. But I raised them; they come to me really young. I think Jay Murda was like 4, and Dylan was like 3. So we had one of my own, right? And she didn't know I was a pro wrestler at the time. She knew nothing about it. She just thought I was a maintenance man of a mobile home park.
Oh wow! Now, when she found out you were a pro wrestler, how did she take that? And then did she how did that go about?
Well, it all started because I had got a phone call to come back to the circuit. Uh-huh. And I said, baby, I want to go back to the circuit. She says she knew about the music aspect, but she didn't know about pro wrestling. Right. I was like, well, I want to go back to pro wrestling. She said, wait a minute. Pro wrestling? You never told me nothing about pro wrestling. I said, shit, I forgot. Well, let's backtrack. And the first show that we took her to, believe it or not, I got to backtrack because the first show I had actually took her to was on our wedding night. We had just got married. And I had a friend of mine, I don't know if you remember, he used to be Cowboy Cash Cutter. He used to wrestle on the WWF way back in the 80s. He actually invited me to a show, and that's where I had met Tom and the rest of the guys at originally. Uh-huh. Is at that show. So we were all sitting out there, and they were all coming up, and they were working me and stuff like that, like a plant. Mm-hmm. And my wife was like really getting into it. I mean, she was really pumped up into it. Mm-hmm. But I never at that time really told her I was a pro wrestler. Right. So, so when I said, I got to go back to the circuit. She says, what are you talking about? I'm like, I'm a pro wrestler. She says, no, you're not. I'm like, yeah, baby, I am. She says, say what? Well, she took it very good. I mean, the problem is she got too good at it because she has been with me as a manager. She's been with me. I started training her from probably about a week later, her and my oldest son. He was at this time, he was about 8 years old. Right. We started training him, and I started training her, and they actually got really good at it. And that's where the Chapmans were born, and she has been with me. She can promote just as good as I can. I mean, she can run a show by herself. She was actually one of the first women promoters that ever came up in this area, And it was funny because that was during the territory days. And let me tell you something, that little 115-pound woman would go out there and stand amongst these guys and tell them, bring it, because she'll throw down with them just like a man will. She didn't care. Her husband was going to do what he wants to do, whether they like it or not. Right. So my wife has always been my rock. And, and despite what anybody says, family, you got to have family supporting you. You got to have family in it. You're always got to have your family first in everything, or it's not going to work.
Right.
So here it is, 30 years later. Thumper Chapman is old and gray. I've put my time into promoting. I can pretty much run it. Well, I used to run the NWA Global. When me and my wife was running the CFWF, we first started off, which was actually Randy Hogan's federation. It was the Central Florida Wrestling Federation, and we had took it over. Kevin Rhodes, which is Dusty's nephew, and them had come in and give us NWA Global to run, because I was always this young, cocky promoter. I didn't take no crap from nobody. You tell me I couldn't do it, I'd go prove a point.
Right.
They told me I'd never be nothing as a promoter. I told them, well, I'm not going to repeat exactly what I said to them, because I'm sure you got children watching, but in a polite way, I told them I'm going to go run the show. And pretty much I did. My wife ran the Central Florida Wrestling Federation. I ran the NWA Global. We run it side by side. Our last draws just before I retired was 3,000 people.
Nice. That's a lot right there. That's pretty damn good for a independent wrestling show.
Oh yeah. And we were top of our game. And then I was actually running the Christian Family Wrestling too, which we were actually working churches, doing food drives, helping the homeless and stuff like that.
Okay.
So I had kind of like 3 federations running at one time, and most of these idiots can't even run one. I was running 2 or 3 at one time.
Wow.
And so I remember Al Hardman, which back in the day was one of the biggest people that fought me more than anything. But Al, you got to understand, Al had been in this business for 35 years. I think Al's been gone for 10 years. So, so he had been, he knew the way of the wrestling world. He had to battle his way up.
Right.
And he had came to me just before he had passed away. He said, listen, he says, in the 35 years I have ran, he said, I have never had more fun than I have running against you. He said, you need to, because I was really wanting to retire at the time. I was done. I was burned out. Mm-hmm. I was just done. My wife was done. And he said, you need to go do what you're called to do and promote.
Right.
Well, backtrack just a little bit. When I was running the CFWF and the Christian Family and the NWA, I had to retire for a few years because when I walked in, my blood pressure was 160 over 120.
Right.
So I was on the verge of stroke. I was 38 at the time.
Wow.
Yeah, on the verge of a stroke. But you got to realize, I was running 3 federations.
Three federations. You're 38 years old, and you're running 3 federations.
And making them all successful.
That would I would go into a stroke because so much stuff. Because you're running 3 promotions, and I'm just taking a stab at this here. You're running 3 promotions, and when you're having shows and stuff, you got 3 different cards and the workers. Now, in between all 3 of those promotions, did you actually use the same workers within those?
Oh yeah, sometimes my guys work sometimes 2 shows a day.
Oh wow.
They would come in sometimes at 6:30 in the morning with a cup of coffee in their hand. They'd work a morning show, then we'd break down and go to the next show that nighttime and do it all over again the next day.
Wow, that's kind of like a story I heard about Ric Flair. He was talking about he'd be in one town here on a, we'll just say like a Tuesday afternoon or a Saturday afternoon wrestling, and then as soon as the match is over, jump on the car, then drive over to the next
500 miles the next year.
Yep, and do that show that night, and then after that, then drive almost all night across to another show for the following morning. Wow,
yeah.
That's
what was funny is we had our own ring at the time. Mm-hmm. Okay. Gordon Soley's family. At this time, Gordon Soley had done shut down. He had retired. He was really old.
Right.
His family had actually donated his ring that he used on his shows on TV to us.
Okay.
So we was actually using his ring for the Christian shows and using our ring for the NWA shows and the Central Florida shows. So we always stayed one ring ahead of everybody. So the guys were going over setting up one ring, and then we was running over to that ring. Then by the time we were done with that ring, they were back breaking down the other ring, bringing it to the next show. So we was jumping. We was always jumping ahead.
Wow.
And I was keeping track of security, concessions. I was keeping track of the cars, the booking, the promoting. I was keeping track of the advertising. I was keeping track of everything.
Right. And and you mentioned your wife. Was she there helping you too?
Oh yeah, yeah. A lot of times, if I was stuck at one show, she'd be at the other show running that show for me.
Wow, that's amazing. That is amazing. Now one thing I know I've heard, and I actually got to see it at one point in my life. A card can change on the fly within a minute. And when that would happen, you were quick to jump in on what to do. You always had a backup. To me, just talking to you about having a ring ahead of time, setting up, you always had a plan and stuff. And that's that's
so the way you can make it is the key to being a promoter in this business. You got to be able to think quick on your feet. You always have an answer, whether it comes out that you're asked or not. You got to have an answer, right or wrong. It's got to be an answer,
right?
And you better make sure you look like you know what you're doing, because if you don't, then the whole locker room is going to get out of order because they're going to stress out.
Right.
Yeah. So so even though if I didn't know what I was going to do, I still made up what I was going to do and pray to God it was the right decision. Yeah. Unfortunately, it was always the right decision. Yeah. Right. And if my wife didn't know, she would call me up. She'd say, honey, what I do about this? And I'd quick give her a rundown, and she'd go take care of it. But you got to understand something about my wife. Okay. My wife is a very strong woman. She is a 115-pound woman that could walk into a locker room of all these pro wrestlers, and if she didn't like how you did something in the ring, she had no problem chewing you out, and you listen to her or she will put you flat on your back. She was mean. She was my wife. She had to be mean. And the promoters, and this is a key that a lot of people don't understand about owners and promoters. They've always got to be the toughest one in the locker room. They always have to be the one with the most experience. Because there is nothing. There is no such thing as an owner or a promoter not knowing. He has to know what to do, no matter what. He has to know. You can't walk up to a worker and say, I got a problem, what do I do? No, you can't do that, because they're doing what you tell them to do. You don't ask them what you should do. The chain of command don't work like that.
Right. Because you're on top. You're the person. You're person running the show, and you have the workers working for you. And
if somebody makes a wrong move, you chew them out. If they don't do a spot like you tell them to, you chew them out. You got to know every move they're doing. You got to know everything. You got to know everything by the book. You have to know every move out there. You have to know every little aspect about pro wrestling to be able. Because pro wrestling is, I like to think of it as like mathematics, or a diagram. You have to know, if you're going to go build a house, you have to know everything about a blueprint to be able to build a house.
Right.
Pro wrestling is the same thing. You have to know every aspect and every level of pro wrestling, whether it's just a ring valet, it's a security guy, advanced staff, or the guy in the main event. You have to know every aspect of pro wrestling. Because if this guy messes up on a hip toss, you got to know exactly how these guys work. You got to know when they mess up and when they don't mess up. You got to know how they do a hip toss. You got to know the difference between the Mexican style. You got to know the difference between American style. So that way, if they're doing a Mexican style and you want an American style, you got to know when to go chew their butts out.
Right.
And you got to know how. Because pro wrestlers are like ADHD kids. You have to keep a firm grip on them. If not, they get out of line. You have to keep a strong grip on them.
Now, have you ever had? Of course, you probably have this before in your career, being a promoter and being a wrestler, coming across people you'd use a lot because they were good workers, and coming across people you'd never use again that are terrible workers. You've had that happen plenty of times.
Yeah, a lot of times. Generally, what we do is we watch your video before they come in, and then we have to watch them in the ring to see how they go. We watch them how they cut promos. It's just like a job interview.
Yeah.
And there has been some guys that psyched out. One of my veterans come in one time and said, Thump, I'll vouch. Kool-Aid, he vouched for a guy. He says, I vouch for this guy. Now, when a veteran comes in and vouches for a guy, I'm going to take his word for it, because he's one of my veterans. He's one of my top dogs. I'm going to take his word for it. And this guy walked in, he said, oh, yeah, I wrestled for this federation. I wrestled for that federation. I wrestled, he didn't realize that I know all these federations, and that's key to being a good promoter. Every federation around you. Yes. Every federation that could possibly be a threat. Everything that they're doing, because that's how you survive.
Right.
So, and a lot of their guys were actually in my locker room because we did interchange guys a lot. So they're listening to this guy talk. And I told this idiot, I said, show me lockup. And I picked out the most easiest worker, which at that time was D.V. Branton. And I said, D.V., I said, lock up with him. You got to even know how to lock up. And I'm like, show me a headlock. He doesn't know how to do a headlock. I told Kool-Aid, I said, now, what you do is you're working this guy in a match. He said, I am. I said, yeah, you're going to go out there and beat his ass. That's what you're going to do. I said, you're going to school him in the proper way we do pro wrestling. And that's how we discipline guys in pro wrestling. We take them in the ring and we school them. And that's where they seriously start getting hurt. And it's intentional. It's very intentional.
Yes.
There's no storylines. Pretty much they just walk in there and one guy starts beating the crap out of the other one. Mm-hmm. It's all legal. Because you walked in, you lied to me, you lied to get on the card, so you disrespected this business that I'm in, you disrespected everybody that's ever trained me, everybody that's ever come in before me, and you disrespected everybody in that locker room. And respect, to make it in pro wrestling, respect is a big key factor.
Right.
People have to respect you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's a little different when you get to be a promoter.
Mm-hmm.
Promoter, you pick and choose who you want.
Right.
I don't have to pick people if I don't want to. I got 20,000 workers in the state of Florida I can choose from.
Right.
And, if I say I'm going to put in a show, I have 5,000 of them beating down my door, so I can pretty much pick and choose who I want.
Right. Because
so it doesn't matter if I like me or not.
Right. Because you have that reputation. You develop that reputation of a promoter. Mm-hmm. You ever come across a promoter that I don't know how I would put it, would be someone that like call you up and say, hey, I need your help on this, or you ever had anything like that, and then you come across promoters that are just bad? Because I've heard from a couple friends.
Many times people have called me, and I'll help anybody.
Right.
But if you're so dumb in this business, I'm not going to help you. You can bring a horse to water, but you can't make him drink.
Right.
No matter how much you try to teach somebody, if they don't have the brains to get it, they're never going to get it.
Yeah.
So pretty much what you do is you basically throw them to the wolves and let them sink or swim.
Sink or swim. Okay.
Or if they push you off, you just go take them down by running against them.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And you play the most dirtiest game, like Ric Flair. When he said he's the dirtiest player of the game, pro wrestling is the dirtiest game there is. Right. Like when Triple H used to say, it's time to play the game, mm-hmm. He's talking about the wrestling game.
Yeah.
The real wrestling game. Yeah. And it is actually a real competitive sport, mm-hmm. Especially amongst promoters. If you tell me I can't run in your area, I'm going to come in here and show you I can.
Right.
And I'll make sure you look bad when I'm doing it, because I'm going to blast you. I'm going to make you look bad. I'm going to make you look as weak and as little as I possibly can. And then I'm going to move in for what we call the wrestling death. Is once I move in, I'm going to kill your federation and I'm going to suffocate your federation till it ain't nothing.
Right.
And that's pro wrestling.
That is what you talked about with the early days and of being, during the territories and stuff and doing that. And I didn't know about that, and that's because like I mentioned earlier, I heard about the big promotions, the big companies, but the small territories, I've never heard that before, any of that, and I don't know what to say. I learned something tonight, man. I did. I've learned something, and I know we talked prior before setting up the interview tonight and stuff, and I was just fascinated by that. I was like, wow, it's like no one's ever talked about that, or I've never heard that, and that fascinates me about how things were back then.
So left alive.
Now, one thing, Thumper, after walking away from the ring, retiring as a promoter, you ended up being away for quite a long time. You've kept up here and there with what was going on in wrestling. Now, not too long ago, you stepped back in the ring. And how did that feel? What was that feeling like, stepping back into the ring after being gone for so long? How was that?
Well, you got to realize I did something that's never been heard of. It's never been heard of, and nobody after 10 years ever stepping back in the ring.
Right.
I stepped back in the ring one time. I had not been training. I had not been in the ring working out. I had stepped back in against my son, Jay Murder, and my adopted son in pro wrestling, Billy McLeod. Mm-hmm. Billy McLeod was my tag team partner against John Strange.
Uh-huh.
And these guys they've never left the wrestling business.
Right.
Right. And these guys are half my age.
Uh-huh.
So, Jay Murda, he's 24. Billy is 28, and I think the oldest one was John Strange. I think he's like 42.
Mm-hmm.
So, so I've got like 3 stacks against me right there. Not counting, I've got the 10 years not being in the ring. That's stacked against me.
Right.
And my wife come out there as my manager, and the minute my music hit and that curtain come up, the old Thumper Chapman was back.
Nice.
It was like an adrenaline, and I know you've heard the stories, from the other wrestlers. It was like a blast of the past. It was like an old friend I haven't seen in years.
Right.
And when I walked out there, and I'm sitting here in the back thinking, oh my God, am I going to mess up walking down the entranceway? Am I going to trip? Am I going to look stupid? Am I going to get where I'm supposed to be? Am I going to trip over the camera? You would be surprised some of the crazy stuff that goes through your head.
Right.
Even though I've done this for many, many years, it still goes through your head. It's like a rookie going right back out again.
Mm-hmm.
And the minute I stepped in that ring, it amazed me because I'll never forget, I looked over the entranceway and I seen all these rookies and veterans watching the match. Mm-hmm. The crowd was like intense into the match. And that even made it worse because, and I think Tom's probably talked to you about, he was watching the match too.
Yeah.
And we had a promoter all the way from up here where I'm at, drive all the way down there to where we was at because we was in Houston to see Thumper Chapman, the most craziest man after 10 years, going to step back in the ring that's never been heard of. He had to go check it out. Yeah. So I didn't have really a lot on me that night.
Right.
And so I'm sitting here, and the whole time we're working, and I don't care what anybody says, you do forget a lot in 10 years.
Right.
If you don't lose it, you lose it. Because at that point, I couldn't tell you the difference between a Mexican hip toss and American hip toss. I couldn't tell you the difference between right or left. I just said, whatever, you're getting whatever I throw at you. So, yeah. But the match went great. The guys were really into it. That we accomplished what we wanted to because we took the fans on a journey. It was father and son stepping in the ring for the first time outside of actually training. That me and actually stepped in against each other, not as my partner, but against each other.
Wow.
And we rocked the house. We rocked the house that night. And yes, I did get the itch back, but I know with my neck injury and my back injury, I can never do it again. I told my wife, and my wife thought I was crazy whenever I told her I wanted to go back in the ring. And when the doctor told me one wrong bump, I could be paralyzed. Right. And you got to realize I've had doctors tell me, said if you take a wrong hit, you're going to be in a chair. If you take a wrong bump, you're going to be in a chair. One wrong turn, you're going to be in a chair. I told my wife, I said, out of all the years that we've been married, because me and her has been married for 20 years now. Wow. Yeah, my second wife. And I told her, I said, every doctor can tell me everything, but until I physically step in that ring to see what I can and cannot do, I won't accept it. Okay. So after 10 years, crazy me stepped back in that ring and worked a 15-minute match, had the time of my life, and loved every minute of it. And I was just glad that the fans had a blast. I'm glad the workers had a blast. Because that's what we're there for. We're there to entertain. Right. We're there to take them on a roller coaster ride, to take them out of reality into the fantasy world, to live with their heroes, to fight with their heroes, against the bad guys. And I was glad that we took them on that journey. That was the greatest last match I can ever say I've had. And there's nothing about that match that I ever regret. That was the best match I've ever seen. And the guys that I worked was great. I mean, they were some of the best.
That's awesome.
Oh, yeah. But, I can honestly say, but you got to understand, pro wrestling is a brotherhood, okay? You just don't walk up and say, oh, I'm going to be one of the brothers. No. You have to earn your way up to the ranks to be a brother. Now, we do get mad at each other. And we do hurt each other, and we do beat the crap out of each other, but we still protect each other, at all cost. Right. And that's been around since the beginning of time. Yeah. But, I hope I haven't bored your fans too much out there.
No. You haven't, man. You haven't. Yeah. You haven't. I've loved every minute tonight talking with you and hearing you talk about the territory days, talking about you coming up in the business, and it's just it fascinates me, and I know my fans and listeners will enjoy that, because it's not every day I get to talk to a veteran in the business as yourself and talk about.
I don't like to talk no more.
No, but I enjoy it, and I know my fans and listeners that tune in will enjoy listening to it, because it's something I hardly talk about, because I talk about current stuff going on currently in wrestling. And do you keep up? Like it used to be. Right. We've had that talk before, because when I talked to you, when I reached out to you to ask you to come on, and we were talking there, and you were talking a little bit about what's going on today with it, because you do keep up with it with what's going on and stuff. Now, with what's going on with the current wrestling now, like AEW, that's starting up. That's made some noise there. AEW, All Elite Wrestling.
AEW, I got to give Cody and them props, because they're doing what their daddy does. Right. They brought wrestling back into wrestling. Okay. They haven't disrespected the business like WWE has. Right. WWE has made a joke out of pro wrestling. AEW has brought pro wrestling back. Yeah.
Right. And it seems like and it seems like, because I watched the Double or Nothing pay-per-view, I watched it. It seems like with independent wrestling, there's not too much restraints on what a worker can do, unlike with WWE, because WWE lets you go so far, they pull you back with what you can do. The independent guys, they go out there and they let it all out. They let it all out. And I do
it really depends on the promoter. Really.
Yeah.
It depends on if the promoter knows the business or not.
Yeah.
How far he'll let it go.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Like NXT. I enjoy watching NXT. I love watching when they do the takeover specials, because they have usually 5 matches, and from start to finish, those matches are almost 5-star matches, because they go out there and they blow the roof off of the place, man. They do, and I enjoy who they have on there. They have a lot now of the talent that's in NXT was from the independent scene. Was from the independent scene. Yeah.
Well, you got to understand something. The guys at WWE, despite what anybody says, we're all on the indie circuit. WWE is still on the indie circuit. They just have more money than everybody else. But that's it. That's all it is.
Right.
The key is everybody that's at WWE has already made it. So they get lazy. The guys in NXT are trying to get where WWE is. Yeah. So they're going to go balls to the walls to get up there. So I'm saying, like AEW, they've already been there.
Yeah.
So they seen everything that they didn't like with WWE, and they're like, you know what? Let's take all this garbage out and throw it away and bring back real pro wrestling.
Right.
Yeah.
Keep it.
Yeah. And
keep it wrestling. I've heard, and a lot of people said NXT reminds them of how WCW used to be, just wrestling. You have your stories, you had your promos, then everything was settled in the ring. Everything was in the ring.
Well, you know who set up NXT, don't you?
What's that?
You know who set up NXT, don't you?
Triple H.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because he got tired of the way WWE was running, so he went and set up NXT.
Yeah, I'm happy with what he's done with NXT, and I've even watched the NXT UK. I've been happy with that too, because that's amazing stuff there, because it's letting you know it's like there's wrestling over here that is just as good or better that you didn't know, that's over right across the ocean of you, right from you over on this side. And same thing with New Japan Wrestling. They've got amazing talent and stuff over overseas.
Have you heard about that new federation that's coming in? That PBENT that's coming out of Ocala?
I have not heard about that. I've not heard about that. What have you?
Because that guy knows his stuff. A lot of the veterans that I come up in the business with is actually working with him over there. That man, he was a recording. He owns his recording studios down in Texas. But let me tell you something. That man is smart.
Really?
He wants to bring back pro wrestling back to the indie circuit like it used to be. Yeah. So and that's the problem with the indie circuit nowadays is too many of these guys brought their what we call marks, their fans.
Yeah. That
decide, I can go buy a ring, so let's do a show. But they don't know the business.
Right.
Yeah. And then guys like us have to go clean up the crap behind them.
Right.
So
now,
and that's the thing.
Now with AEW, Tony Khan, his son, right there. He's a fan, but having like you mentioned, Cody running it and stuff. He's basically he's like, here, it's like, start your promotion. Here's the money, and I'll back you on what you need to make a successful promotion. And that's one thing.
Well, you got Cody and Dustin. They come up in the same era that I did. Yeah, I mean, they were running up underneath their daddy's feet in diapers. So, I mean, they're like my kids. They grew up in this business. They know this business. You know, they know how it's supposed to be.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I got a lot of good things I'm hearing about AEW coming.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of good stuff.
I'm actually going to be next week. It's on the 29th. I'm actually going over to the Ocean Center to watch the CEO gaming video game thing they have going on, the event with the AEW wrestling. I went to it last year when it was New Japan Wrestling, which was great, fantastic. And I'm going again this year and get to see AEW live. I'm excited about that. That.
Oh yeah. Well, you got to realize AEW is also working with a lot of the indie circuits, a lot of the indie feds too. Mm-hmm. You know, they're like PBENT. They're wanting to bring us back at the brotherhood like we used to and work together. Mm-hmm. So, and that's why they'll make it when WWE won't, because let's face it, you know, like I tell a lot of my viewers, you know, once in the big time, twice on the indies. You start on the indies, you go to big time, you come back on the indies.
Right.
Yeah. And they know this. And that's one of their biggest things right now is they're playing the indies, which is smart because that's where your talent is on the indies. Mm-hmm. Yeah, on the indie circuit. Right. And that's where everybody pulls from is the indie circuit.
Mm-hmm. That's kind of like with talking about indies, especially like NXT with a lot of indie workers being on there. It's like what CM Punk said on his famous pipe bomb, that the promo that he cut, and he mentioned he mentioned what everything he said has already happened and stuff, because with having a lot of independent wrestlers coming into NXT. Because I know Triple H wanted to take NXT and just make it more of a developmental with having the talent and stuff.
I'm sorry, my son just got home, and the dogs love him. Yeah, but he's the one that came up in the business as a baby. But you're absolutely right. You know, I mean, he was right on the money. You know, when he said that. You know. And that was the smartest move that I think Triple H could have ever done, is start up NXT, because he went back to where WWE, where Vince had forgot.
Yes,
is you got to go to the indie to get all your workers to come in. Okay, see, Vince was like, oh, well, I'll go get this big guy, I'll go get this girl from the big circuit, you know, and bring him in. He forgot about all the talent that was on the indie circuit.
Right.
Triple H has said, hey, let's go back to the indie circuit and, you know, and pull the workers from the indie circuit, the good workers, and bring them into NXT. We'll weed through them, we'll train them the way we want, and then ship them right back out to WWE. Mm-hmm. And that's why NXT is actually getting bigger than WWE, because I think the wrestling world wants what we call the attitude era. They want that attitude era back. Yeah. You know, back in the 80s and the 90s. You know, they don't want all this flamboyant garbage that WWE's throwing out there. But why do you think WWE's bought mostly girls in? Because, let's face it, who don't like girls?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. I mean, yeah, who does not like girls and stuff?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, why am I going to pay a guy $100 to come to a show, or $150 or $500 to a show, when I can go find a good-looking girl, you know, that's built of the same price, and put her in the ring and do 3 times the draw? I mean, that's common sense. I mean, yeah.
Exactly.
Now, I mean, it sounds bad, I know, but if you look at most of your viewers in pro wrestling are men. You know, because it's a man sport. Mm-hmm. What are men attracted to? Well, most normal men anyway are women. Yeah. You know, but you know, and I shouldn't have said that. I know, but you know, but you got to think old school promoter. You know, and we as a society, they like watching women. So we bring the women in, we put the women on our shows, and we double our profits.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they leave with money in their hands, you know, as for working that night. We leave with money in our pockets, and everybody's happy. The crowd's happy, we're happy, everybody's happy. Yeah.
Right. Now, with everything that's going on with WWE, like you mentioned, with their low ratings, AEW is All Out. That's going to be happening in September again. Sold out in 15 minutes. This Sunday, WWE has Stomping Ground. They can't even fill a 20,000 seat arena. And I was talking with someone today about that, about how he said, do you remember how back when every Monday Night Raw was sold out, every pay-per-view was sold out? You don't that's the thing of the past now for WWE now. And someone's mentioned, I've had this conversation before with a lot of people, said they need to bring back the Attitude Era. The way I seen how the Attitude Era happened was because WWE had WCW as head-to-head competition. It was basically sink or swim with what WCW was doing, and that's why they got more edgier, more Jerry Springer type, because they were fighting for survival.
Exactly, yeah. You know, that's like, you know, whenever I stepped in the ring, you know, I never sit there worried about, I barely concentrated on the fans. I was worried about, was I going to make it to the match without getting my neck broke, you know? Because when they hit you, they hit you. You know, when they throw you backwards, they throw you backwards. No matter, pipes hurt. I'm sorry, pipes and walls hurt. and everybody likes that. Everybody has always liked that. They've always liked that muscular guy that could stand toe to toe with somebody and fight. Right. You know, they don't like a bunch of guys dancing around, looking stupid. You know, we see that enough on the street every day. Yeah. You know, take us to a fantasy world. You know, to where you know, men versus men or women versus women, the strongest survive. You know, the straight out, kind of like the old days back when the straight out brawl in the ring. You know, when we did the cowbell matches or the Texas rope matches or the lumberjack matches or the barbed wire matches. You know, let's face it. You know, who don't like to see somebody get beat down with barbed wire? You know, or. You know what I'm saying? You know, because you're thinking, oh my God, how does this man do this? I mean, he's still coming back after getting beat with barbed wire. I mean, see that pretty scar on my forehead? I didn't get that from picking flowers. You know, I mean, I didn't get the beautiful looks, but you know, just because I went down to get a what do you call that? Makeover. You know, the scars are real. You know. Right. And that's where I train my kids. You know, when you take it, you go all out. You know, and that's what they do. You know, and that's why I have students that travel all over the world. I still call them my students. I guess I shouldn't because they're veterans now, but you know, they travel all over the United States now working because they put it all out there and they leave it out there. When it's time to go home, they leave it right there in the ring. You know, and they get paid very good at it. Right. But it's just. You got to know your product that you're selling, honestly. And that's where I think AEW has got it, because they know the product. They know what people want to see. WWE has got more on the money and to catering to not really catering to their fans, but to catering to society. You know, they forgot what their fans wanted to see and wanted to go along with what society wanted to see. Right. You know? You got to give what your fans want, you know, and your fans will always tell you what you want, what they want to see, you know. If you see two guys beating each other with a baseball bat, and they're all cheering, then 9 times out of 10 they want to see two people with a baseball bat. Right. You know? Right. Yeah. Right. Not somebody dancing around in a pink tutu. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. So, now, keep it real. That's all it is. I always have. you're a straight shooter, and that's what I like about you. You're a straight shooter. You tell it like it is. People are going to like you or hate you.
You know,
they probably hate me more than they like me, but that's how I brought up in this business. You know, straight to the point. You know,
right?
Know your game, know your role, and know your place. And if not, I will tell you real quick where your place is. It's the back of the line.
Now, talking about students. You mentioned students, and you mentioned training. Now, anyone that is starting out in pro wrestling, anybody that's starting out, what advice would you give someone? If someone came to you and said, I'm starting out in pro wrestling, and what advice would you give someone?
Run. I would tell them, honestly, is that if their heart is truly into this, 3 main keys to having this business. 1, be very humble. Be very respectful. That'll take you a long ways in this business. Respect your veterans. Respect your promoters. Pick and choose that you work for. Make sure you work for the better companies. Make sure you just don't fly to one company and stick with it. Keep your options open and always look for respect in the locker room. If you don't see respect in the locker room, you don't want to be there. If everybody knows the promoter, 9 times out of 10, it's a good promoter. Never stop training. There's no such thing as you've been trained enough. You've got to constantly keep training. You know, the more training, the better. You know, if you want to make it anywhere in this business, you've got to stand out. You know, as a matter of fact, I just told one guy actually a couple of days ago. He calls me, and I have workers call me for advice sometimes. And I told him, I said, you want to stand out. You want people to see you. You want to come out of the shadows and be noticed. And that's how you climb up in this business. The more promoters that notice you, the more that you're going to get around. And when he did that, he's gotten bookings in Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, New York. I mean, you know, and that's the key. You know, it's not, you know, back when I was coming up, you would travel 300 miles for $50.
Right.
Nowadays, it's $400 for 50 miles. So, I mean, the times changed a lot. And a lot of times they'll ask me, what should I charge these people? And I'll tell them what to charge them, you know.
Right.
You know, I'll tell them, you know, pretty much how they should charge them, you know, what they should get in a package deal. You know, I give them a lot of insights to the business that a lot of promoters won't give them.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to see these guys advance. You know, I want them to go to places where I've been, you know, and see some of the excitements that I have seen. You know, not everybody wants to stay in a Fed where only pulling 20, 30 people. You know, I want to get them to the 3 to 4 to 10,000 peoples, because the bigger the crowds, the more excitement it is, you know.
Right.
But you got to understand, crowds are like a drug, okay? Once you get into pro wrestling, and it's not, once you retire, it's not the pro wrestling that's hard to get over. It's hearing the fans chant your name or cheer for you, or it's like a drug, you know. You miss being the center of attention.
Right.
You know, you don't even miss the catering in the back, or, you know, you do miss the autograph signings or stuff like that. You miss that, you know, because like with me, when I'm at home, I'm dad.
Right.
My kids ain't running behind me getting my autograph. My wife ain't running behind me. But, you know, I'll go out in public and I have little kids like, oh, Thump, can I have your autograph? Or, you know, Thump, can you take a picture with me? The last show, it took me almost an hour to get around, because I think I took like 55 pictures with fans and probably signed 100 different autographs.
Wow.
And I told my wife, I said, I missed this. You know, of course, you know, it was overwhelming, but I missed it. Yeah.
Right.
And, you know, matter of fact, I'm actually been talking to one of our mutual friends about when I come out of surgery going and managing him.
Yes.
Yeah. And so that's going to be a new era that I'm going to still promote and try to manage him too. And, you know, me and him's known each other for years. He's watched my kids grow up, and I've watched his kids grow up.
Right.
So I have managed in the past, but not as much. So this is going to be like a new era for me coming in and managing him, because we're going to alter my whole gimmick, my whole character to, well, the Thumper Chapman is going to be altered. I mean, you'll have to just tune in to watch to see how it gets altered, but we're going to alter it and bring something new to more of a more 2019 style to it. So yeah,
nice.
So it's going to be interesting.
that does sound interesting there. Right? That does right there. Just reinventing yourself, and that's always fun. That not always fun for a worker that gets to a certain point, and then they reinvent themselves, and it's like a fresh new life. One of my favorite wrestlers from WCW was Sting.
Sting.
Sting, I loved because I remember as a kid, I'd sit there and watch WCW with my dad and my brother, and I remember the bleach blonde, flat top, wild face paint Sting. And then,
you know who his cousin was, don't you?
Who?
The Ultimate Warrior.
Oh, are they cousins? I knew back in the day when they were starting out, they were a tag team called the Blade Runners. Yeah. And, but he's actually a fantastic guy. He's really, I mean, if you ever watch his video, Sting, the movie Sting that he did, really tells you the story about pro wrestling. From our eras, you got to go find it. I mean, it's phenomenal. It will tell you a lot of in depth about it that a lot of people need to know about. Yeah. Right. He was always one of my favorites in WCW, because with him reinventing himself with doing the black and white crow gimmick, and doing that, and then that brought a whole new level to who Sting was, and having that feud with Hollywood Hulk Hogan and the NWO was just so great. And him not speaking for a whole year, just with that baseball bat.
My thongs. He stands in the mirror all the time going, yeah, look at this. I just got worked out. Yeah, look how good I look. I'm like, give it up, dude. Yeah, you're old.
Oh, damn.
He's going to kill me when he does that.
I was lucky. I was telling you before we went live tonight, I was lucky that I got to go up to New York for SummerSlam of 2015, and I was telling you about the crowd response with John Cena and stuff. The following night, we got this package deal. Me and my wife did. The following night, we got to go back to the Barclays Center for Monday Night Raw, and I was there when they brought out the thing, and when Sting showed up, and I marked out. I just grabbed my wife. I'm like, look, it's Sting, and I just marked out as a fan. And my wife's like, I know. I'm sitting there. I'm like, oh my god. I think I was yelling like Joey Styles from like ECW, when something would happen. That's because I watched him for so many years on TV, and actually seen him after all these years in person, and it's just like seeing The Undertaker. I watched him for 20, 25, whatever years as a little kid on TV to now, and during that time, seeing him come out with his entrance and stuff, just like Paul Bearer, you've probably heard this before. Paul Bearer says, and even Kane said, when they would be in the ring, and when he would come to the ring, the hair would stand up. It did for me, just seeing him come to the ring. It's like, wow. It's just...
But it's funny, because whenever I take my students to go meet the guys, I tell them, I say, you mark out, I'm going to knock you upside the head. I will slap you, don't mark out to them. And he's like, what? But I said, you shake hands, you can say, hi, how you doing? It's nice to meet you. Don't be a fan. You respect it. Don't you be a fan. Yeah. Because most pro wrestlers, do not like if you see us in public. They don't like for you to run up saying, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God." They like to be greeted as a regular person.
Yes.
It's okay to ask for an autograph, but they're normal people. You know, we have families, we have kids, we have dogs that bark. You know, we have cars. We are normal people outside the ring.
Right.
You know, and we like to be treated like normal people. You know. Unless you're so hung up on yourself that you got to do the 24-inch pythons.
But yeah, it's when I first met like Jimmy Hart, and when he was here in Daytona, when I first met him, it's like everything that, you know, it's just I kept in because I did not want to come off like that. You got to meet him, take his picture, and I got to, you know, talk with him every once in a while when I'd go down and watch wrestling there at his place when he used to have it here in Daytona. And it's just I brought one of my friends one night. We went out there to watch, I think it was like SmackDown. And he came out and he got to meet Jimmy and everything. And then we went to the pisser, and we're sitting there in the pisser, and he looks over to me. He goes, "Man," he goes, "I met Jimmy fucking Hart." And he's like, "I'm trying everything not to be like, oh my God, it's Jimmy Hart." And I said, "Yeah, dude, hold that in. Don't do that because they don't like that." I said, "Don't do it." And he's like, "I am, man." He's like, I grew up watching this cat on TV. It's just, he was so excited about it, and he was like, "I can't believe it." He's like, "I met Jimmy Hart."
It's funny because Mark Boss, he used to ref for WWF at ECW back in the day. Yeah, he'll go on some of the cards, and so Frankie Reyes too. Matter of fact, I just did a show with Frankie Reyes and Mark Boss, and these guys are like, "Oh my God, oh my God!" I'm like, "Are y'all really going to mark out to these guys? Come on, dude." I'm looking at Frankie, and I'm looking at Mark. I says, "Man, these jabronis or something else." Yeah. And it's funny because we were all sitting ratting or running, and we were changing in our outfits. You know, we're just bull crapping back and forth like we always do.
Right.
And these kids are running by, shaking our hands, saying, "Oh, thank you for paving the way. Thank you, thank you, thank you." And I'm like, you know, I'm just trying to get my pants on and tie my boots up. I don't really care, but okay, nice to meet you too. But you gotta love them, though.
that is great. I told you that I talk to JJ McGuire, Hurricane JJ McGuire. He collaborated with Jimmy Hart with a lot of the Federation years with a lot of the theme music and for WWF. And I was talking with him, and one of my favorite stories. I bring this up every once in a while. I say one of my favorite stories about that you told me was he was backstage with workers, and they were about to do a show, and the crowd's coming in, you know, get ready, the bell time's getting ready to start, and JJ said he looked out there, and he was looking at the crowd, and he said, Hogan said to him, he said, "McGuire," he said, "what's it look like out there?" And he looked, and he said, "Yep," he said, "the arena's filling up with marks." And he said, Randy Savage was right there. And Savage was getting ready, you know, getting his boots laced up. And he looked up and he said, "McGuire," he said, "we're all marks." I love that story. That's my favorite story there when he told me, because it's just, and even AJ Styles mentioned it. It's like even he said he's even a mark for. Oh yeah. You know.
In fact, we're all marks for somebody. Mm-hmm. You know, my marks was Ron Bass, Dutch Rhodes, Blackjack Mulligan. You know, God rest their soul. They're all gone now. You know, and I do admire some of the guys' works nowadays. Mm-hmm. You know, because there are a lot of them are good workers. You know. You know, Jimmy Hart, I've always loved the way he was the mouth of the South. You know, they could throw that man all the way around the ring, and he was like a rag doll. He'd snap right back, and I love that. Unfortunately, Thump never could bounce like that. It hurt when I hit. Yeah, but I was always a bigger guy. Yeah, and mental note, guys, if you see a worker taking a bathroom break, don't run up the urinal and want to shake their hand. That we don't like that. We do have to have a private moment from time to time.
Yeah. That's like
I remember I was in the bathroom one time, and I was in that moment, to where you have to be behind closed doors. And I've got these kids beating on their doors like, Mr. Chapman, can we get your autograph? I'm like, give me 1 minute. And when your pants are down around your knees, you are not thinking about signing autographs at that time. That's the last thing on your mind. And we do not carry pins on us in the bathroom. Okay, we don't do it.
Right.
So yeah, but it's hilarious of some of the things that we have ran into over the years. The different shows. It's crazy. I wouldn't take nothing from them. I really would. Right. Mark Boss and Frankie Reyes called us with the NWA Weekend Warriors. Because we left on a Friday and come back on a Monday, and WWE, they're gone for 300 days out of the year. I was like, yeah, but if it wasn't for us Weekend Warriors, y'all wouldn't have that 300 days out of the year either.
Right.
Yeah. And so, and that's what they used to call the older guys as the Weekend Warriors, because we mainly worked on the weekends. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, but if it wasn't for the Weekend Warriors, then they wouldn't have that 300-something days out of the year.
Right.
Because we made the way for them. Yeah. And, but we still, I sit down and cut up with the guys a lot, we tell stories back and forth, and we have a lot of good times, more of the new guys, a lot of them get on our nerves anymore because pro wrestling has lost so much. It's lost a lot of the respect. It's lost a lot of the creativity. Everybody's trying to copy what the WWE does instead of using that God's gift that God gave you, that creative imagination. You don't see that. You don't see that much anymore.
Right.
And that's really sad.
Right.
Whenever I quit watching WWE, I think back in 99, I think it was, or 90, maybe 96, somewhere around I quit watching them.
Right.
Because about the time I started promoting, I quit watching because I didn't want to copy none of their ideas. Mm-hmm. I wanted to have my own ideas. Everything, I always wanted to be all natural, straight come from our creativity board. I didn't want to be copies.
Right.
I wanted our character to be all original. So, right. And we did it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's like, that's true. I mean, why would you want to copy that? You were watching Monday Night Raw, and then you see Steve Austin beat Vince McMahon up in a hospital bed and hits him upside the head with a bedpan. I mean, you don't want to do that. And, of course, where are you going to rent a Zamboni at?
Exactly, yeah. Who's got $10 million laying around just to go rent one of them places? Yeah.
And where are you gonna get a Corvette, and you're gonna get a cement truck, and you're gonna destroy I don't even know how much Corvettes cost. I know more than what I have out in the drive. Yeah. Let's just here you go. Yeah, good. I mean, it brought ratings though, but it's like I'm not paying for it. I mean, yeah, exactly. That's a good way to look at it right there. It's like, why copy something that's going on like that? But you could take little bits of aspects and not copy the whole thing. It's like, okay.
Vince actually used to steal a lot of stuff off the indie circuit. And I know he's going to get pissed if he hears this, but I'm going to say it. We caught many times their guys back before the internet come out. They would be coming to the different shows, and they would videotape different matches, and 6 months later you'd see it on the TV show.
I can believe that.
Because that was before YouTube and everything. So,
mm-hmm. I can definitely believe that, man. I mean, yeah. I mean, just it's like still from the best. I met Jim Cornette. My dad and my brother was a big fan of Cornette. I met him last year at a wrestling event in Orlando, and when I got to meet him, I was wearing the Jimmy Hart that Tiki Bar Hall of Fame Bar and Grill shirt. And when I first walked up, that's the first thing he noticed, and we just started off, broke the ice, good conversation and stuff. And the best advice he gave me was, he said, stealing. It's like, you're stealing this from me. You stole that from me. He's like, no, I'm borrowing it for research. he said, how do I steal? How am I stealing from you? Because I take this from here, take that from there, and take from here. It's research because I'm learning. The best.
Yeah. Maybe that's why WWE storyline sucks so bad, because now we have this thing called YouTube and it's already copyrighted, so he can't really steal it no more because everybody's already saw it. So storyline suck now.
There you go. That's a good way to look at it. That's definitely a good way to look at it right there. Yeah. It definitely is.
It's on YouTube, so it's already copyrighted.
Exactly. Exactly.
He's gonna be cussing me out tomorrow, that damn thump. Hey, what can I say? I'm an ass. I know it. At least I'm honest.
Mm-hmm. You're honest. You're honest. You're definitely honest. I do want to thank you for coming on tonight here and just chatting with me.
I have had a blast.
I have too, man. Just talk with you. Good conversation. Love to get you back on again another time and talk some more and talk about wrestling. And I learned quite a bit tonight, and I want to thank you for opening my mind up to a lot of things that
well, you taught me a lot too, because I didn't know you could put 2 cameras on you on a podcast. I didn't know that. I always thought you had to use a phone.
It's amazing what you can do with a PC. What you can do in the years it took to build to get to a point in my life to actually get to this far, and I'm proud and happy about it. And I
always just tell the camera people, I don't know what you said, just do whatever you do. Just do whatever you do. Just don't buy
it. Yeah, that's. If I had a producer, I would probably, like at times when things go haywire. I mean, when you're live, sometimes anything happens and you get to screw ups and stuff. And it's like I yell at the producer. The producers name different names each week. If something happens, it's Larry, Bob, Jim, Dick. It's like, hey, you're screwing up. Thanks a lot.
Real quick before we go, I got to tell you a funny story. I was on Doug Masters' show. I don't know if you've ever met Doug Masters yet. He's a great guy. He's like, no, we're going to put you in the green room. I'm like, I don't see no green rooms. He says, no, that's what we call it, the room just before we go live. And I'm sitting there talking to him. I said, are we live yet? Are we live yet? He said, no, we've been live 2 minutes ago. I'm like, oh, okay. Because I'm always used to the cameraman going, well, over here. And they go, 5, 4, 3, 2. And I'm like, nobody counted me in. I'm like, you can't do that to the mentally challenged, man. It don't work like that.
Yeah, I mean, before we went live tonight, I pretty much I like to prepare my guests, let them know what I'm doing before we go live and into it and everything and stuff. I don't want to get someone on here and not give them direction and they're just sitting there like, okay, all right, man, all right.
Yeah, I kind of did that on the Harry Power show because they're more like a debate. And the whole time I sat there, I didn't know what they were doing because I was just kind of sit there dumb like, what do I do? Where's the script? What do I do? Tell me something. I don't know. Yeah. So, I mean, they're great guys. It was just more modern day style, and I was like totally lost. I didn't know what to do. But they're great guys. They took real good care of me. They really did. I think all of them. Yeah, I'm glad that the guys that do the podcast take good care of me, because old timers like me, we get lost with the technology.
Now you will come across some. You'll come across some that that know what they're doing, and you'll come across some that won't know what they're doing, and you'll come across some that basically, it's like they're even pissed off to be doing what they're doing. It's like, well, why you're doing it? And then you got people that you come across a lot of variety, and basically it's just you get on the ones that are prepared and let you know it's going to be a good one, and they let you know how. I
promised my wife, because I go in for surgery July the 19th. I told her, I said, this baby will be my last podcast I do until surgery. Yeah. And she says, I got to promise. I said, I promise. Because normally I turn down 4 or 5 of them a day, but we have a mutual friend, so I said, I got to do this one last podcast. And after I talked to you, I was like, that's it. I got to do this one last podcast. Yeah. Because I enjoyed talking to you that day. And, and I told my wife, I said, because she will make me retire officially from everything for 6 weeks until I recuperate. And then the doctors reevaluate, tell me if I'm good to go back or not, with limitations. So I did promise her I would stop doing the podcast and everything until after surgery. So, so after surgery, we can get back together and everything and do it and do it again.
Okay.
So
nice.
maybe if you can bring a couple other people on, we'll bring Chris Raines or Bill Crude or somebody on with us, and we'll really tell you some old stories.
Oh, I definitely.
Back in the day.
I definitely love that. I would. I definitely. Heck yeah. we'll set a date. We'll set a date after your surgery and everything and stuff. And good luck. And I hope everything goes well with your surgery next month.
So, all right, guys. Well, listen, I enjoyed it. You have a wonderful day, and all your fans have a blessed day. And I enjoy it. And keep up out there. Keep up keeping up what you're doing. Yeah.
Thank you.
So all right, guys. Y'all have a wonderful day.
All right.
Y'all have a good night.
All right. I'll see you, Thumper. Bye-bye.
All right.
Bye. And, ladies and gentlemen, that was Thumper Chapman. I enjoyed having him on tonight, and great conversation. Great conversation, man. Definitely great conversation. And that's pretty much it tonight for the Everett Lee Show and for this podcast. But before I do go, I do want to mention more of where you can find the Everett Lee Show at. Right here on Podcast City Network, everettpodcastcity.net for the latest content and shows of Podcast City Network over on podcastcity.net. Hit them up on Facebook, Podcast City Network. Hit that thumbs up and follow for notifications. And on Twitter, send a tweet to Podcast City Network over on Twitter at Podcast City Net. And be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel of Podcast City Network on YouTube, Podcast City Network. And right here on twitch.tv/Podcast City Network. Be sure to subscribe to Podcast City Network right here on Twitch when we go live. And not that right there. I am trying to find my thing. Well, I can't find it though, but I'll just say this. All right. Be sure to follow Everett Lee on Facebook, The Everett Lee Show. Click that thumbs up. And of course, over on Twitter at the Everett _Lee. And you can listen to the audio portion of this podcast and many, many more previous release podcasts on Podbean.com, Everett Lee Show, on Stitcher Radio, and on iTunes. And that is it, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm hitting the outro music. But actually, before I do want to mention that next week I will have another promoter on the podcast, which will be Demi Blevins of Battle on the Border Wrestling, Pro Wrestling from Ohio. And I will have him on the next podcast. So next week, be sure to tune in to that podcast as well. And that is it. As soon as the intro music would play. There we go. Little delay. Everett Lee signing off. Have a good night, everyone, and a good week. And we'll see you again next week for another episode of the Everett Lee Show.